Hello everyone, welcome to another Ask the Trainer session, another winter-themed Ask the Trainer session. And my name is Jonas, I'm in the Maxon training team, and today I'm joined by Ellie and Noseman. And yeah, we're gonna have some fun creating winter setups. We did that for the last two sessions already, so if you wanna check them out, we're gonna paste the link in a second, and we're gonna go through all of the housekeeping also in a second. So let me start with this right away. And yeah, let me share the screen. So here we go. Cool. I am on the Maxon events page at the moment, and you can go there by going to maxon.net and then news, events, and this is where you go. We have exciting webinars coming up. You can see them all listed here. Ask the Trainer webinars, VFX and Chill is going to be tomorrow. Then we've got Redshift workflows in different host applications this month on Mondays. And also there is a hands-on with Maxon workshop running at the moment about character creation workflows. And next week on Thursday, we're going to have another Maxon color session, and then it will all repeat and so on. And in case you missed something or tuned in late, you can always go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. And here you can find all the recordings of the webinars we are doing. And go check them out. There are hundreds of hours of training already on there. And then the last link that I want to share here is the link to our Ask the Trainer exclusive workshop, where you can, well, I think Ellie is going to paste the link into the chat in a second, and also a coupon code. And when you enter the site, you have to type in this coupon code or paste it, and then you would only have to pay for the shipping. You can order one t-shirt and the t-shirt is for free. As I said, you only have to pay for the shipping. All right, now that's the housekeeping, and I'm going to jump into an empty Cinema 4D scene here. And let me bring something up that I created this week. And we want to start with that. So here I've got a little thingy that I have to scale down a little bit so it fits on the screen. And what I want to show you today is how you can create traces. So in this case, I have those three snowballs that are running down or rolling down a hill and leaving traces. And there are multiple ways of doing that. I'm going to show you one or maybe even two. One is going to be based, or the first one is going to be based on the collision deformer, and the second one is going to be based on fields. And after that, Noseman is also going to show you a lot of exciting things. All right, so how can we do that? I'm going to start creating this from scratch. And the first thing I want to do is creating a plane. It's that complicated. So let me rotate it a little bit, just a few degrees, maybe 15. And then let's create a few spheres. And I'm going to make that sphere smaller here. Let's just create one sphere. Let's make it smaller, and I also want to hit NB on the keyboard, which will bring on the line shading. You can also find that here under display and then go shading with lines, NB. Here's the shortcut again. And yeah, now we set this up, this sphere up to be a hexahedron, like so. And I'm still gonna scale it down a little bit and maybe place it up here because we want to make this a dynamic simulation. And then this ball is falling down and rolling down that plane. So here we go. Maybe we're also, yeah, I want to deform this a little bit so that it has a little bit more snowbally feel to it. Can I say it like that? Snowbally feel? I don't know. However, and I'm gonna create a displacer here. So let's go to the displacer and let's add this one. And I'm gonna hold down the shift key while I create it. So this way I'm gonna create it as a child immediately. And the displacer works as follows. You have a strength here, but you also have a shading tab here. And the shading tab is very important because here you can bring in a shader or whatever you like, and whatever is 50% gray in that shader will just leave the surface as is. Whatever black parts or dark parts are gonna push things inwards, and brighter parts or white parts are gonna push the surface outwards. And I'm gonna use a noise here, and then you can see that in action. So now it's deforming like crazy, and I just wanna click that noise shader and scale it up in the global scale, so we have something like this. Just a sphere that is not 100% round, that has this little variation in it so that it doesn't roll down the hill like a ball, but like something that is more snowbally. I like that word. All right, so, and let me set up the simulation first. I'm going to create a bullet tag on here. So let's go with bullet tags, and this is going to be a rigid body. And then the plane is going to be a bullet collider. So we're not going to use the new unified simulation stuff. In this case, we are going to use the bullet simulation engine. This is going to be a collider body. And now if I hit play, you can see that this thing is falling down and then rolling down the hill. And you can see that it has this wobbly animation as it's going down. All right, that's cool. So how can we create a surface that we can deform here? That's actually pretty easy. I want to keep this as the collider, but one thing that I also want to do is I want to create a surface that can be deformed, like some sort of snow. And for that, I'm just going to create that plane, and I'm going to duplicate that plane, and I'm going to delete the collider tag. And this is going to be my snow. Right. So now with this snow, I can do many other things. First of all, if I want it to deform, I need to bring up the segments. So let's crank up the segments here. And also, I want to move this up a little bit. I'm going to use the move tool in using the world space coordinates and just move this a little bit up. And the cool thing about that is that I can now still run the simulation, but this plane is not a collider. So the sphere will fall through it, but then collide with the other plane. And what I can do with this now is I can add a deformer, and that deformer is called the collision deformer. And I'm gonna grab it here from the deformer menu, and let me find it. Collision, collision, collision. Where do we have it? Here it is. And I'm gonna hold down the shift key again, and now we have the collision deformer here. So we need some colliders, and let's define the colliders. In this case, it's just this sphere here. And now let me play back the animation again, and now you can see that it's already deforming, right? When we are looking, when we have a look at this one, you can see that it is deforming. All right. So the next thing I want is I want this shape here not to be restored. And there is a restore shape parameter that you can simply bring down to 0. And this way you can create these traces. And the cool thing is that this also works with other colliders. So you can add as many as you want. So let me create a duplicate of this sphere here and maybe place it here and rotate it a little bit like so. And then we have to go back to the collision deformer and just drag and drop that second sphere in here and hit play, and you will see that it's also working. That's the first approach that we can take. And there is a second one. So also one thing that is great here is that you cannot only use that for dynamic stuff. For example, when I create a third sphere, let me just create a sphere here and make it smaller. This could also be like a foot of a character. And if we add it to the colliders, and let me just hit play here and just bring this down here. You can see that, that it is colliding and it's changing the shape here. Okay, what is the other way? The other way would be, instead of doing it with a deformer, to do it with fields, and well, then also with a deformer. But the way of creating that trace here is gonna be different. So let me go back to frame 0 here, and let me make the collision deformer inactive. And the next thing I want to do is I want to create a vertex map on that snow plane. And to do that, I'm going to go to Other Tags and Vertex Map. And I'm going to set the vertex map to use fields. That's already the case. And now we can just drag and drop the sphere in here. And if we hit play now, you can see that you cannot see anything. Let me use volume here instead. And maybe let me also, let me see what the problem is right now. Let me add a decay field and bring this up to 100%. All right. What's happening here? Here is the sphere. We're using this. Maybe let's do it like that. Well, something isn't really working here. That's interesting. Let me cache the scene for now. Let's go to the rigid body tag and bake all. Here we go. Now we can scrub through the timeline and have another look at this. All right, that's indeed interesting. What did I do different the last time? So maybe let me make these editable and see if it works now. Oh, let me find that out in the background while Noseman will show his setup. Are you ready to share your screen?
Okay, I wasn't paying attention, but yeah, I'm ready.
All right.
Whenever you're ready to share my screen.
I'm ready. I'm going to share your screen now.
Yeah,
there you are. You have it. You have it.
Well, hello, everyone. I was working on some of the various questions to which I don't have answers. So I'm going to show you a couple of things today in no particular order. And one of them is a very simple way to create the illusion of something icing over. And let me go closer here. Yeah, I need to, there we go. And we're not going to use any nodes or anything like that. And this is a growing vertex map. And let me show you how I did this for anyone that hasn't used fields and the freeze layer. And then I'm going to show you a very quick and cheap trick on how to apply it so that this grows as we advance here. And it's going to go a bit slow because it's rendering at the same time. This thing is going to advance the growth, as you can see, and you can add some seed points. Anyhow, so let me just grab the empty one. I'm going to shut this down, and we have this this statue here, which has over 250,000 points. I have used, it was, I think, originally 2.5 million points, and you can use either the remesh, but for my case, I use the polygon reduction to just make it slightly smaller. And what this is doing, this is live over here. I've got these two vertex maps. The first vertex map has 3 spherical fields. And I'm going to show you how we can obtain this result. You can see up here that as it's playing, these are growing. So let me remove these two, delete these, and all I have in my scene now is, well, the dome light, which I don't need, the actual model, and three fields, spherical fields. One has been placed over here. I just chose three random points on the model just to seed some values. And how these seeds are going to work, and I'm going to show you what the random field does later on. At the end of the day, I can just delete everything and start totally from scratch. I'm going to go to this model, and I'm going to add from the other tags a vertex map. Now, if it's a mesh object, not a procedural object, if it's just a editable object, you have to go to your tag and activate the fields and remove the freeze layer. Now, let's go and create a spherical field, and it's somewhere down at the bottom. Go to your Move tool, activate your snapping, and let's go up here and click over here, and it should snap. My snap was on before, so I unsnapped it. Let's just click and drag it. Oh, it was on. Yeah, now it's on. Oh, yeah. So this is something that happens to me all the time. When you create a field from inside an object, it selects everything. Just make sure only one object is selected, because otherwise it cannot snap. If both are selected, it doesn't know what to snap where, and it generally has issues. That's why it wasn't snapping. There you go. So I have this field here. Now, if I select this, you will see that depending on the size of this, I get values of 1, which are the yellow ones. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to remap this so it's a bit sharper. So I'm just growing this this center brown line. I'm just growing it to the edge, and I can use that orange little dot. Undo again. Where's my orange dot? There it is. Just to make it small, I'm going to turn off my snapping for now. So I have one seed which I can animate in. I'm just going to leave it there as an initial value. And what you could do, first of all, name things. I'm going to make a copy. I'm going to do this with 2. Activate your snapping, and let's go and add another one over here. So when I go to my field list, the second one, number 2, in order for both of them to be available, if I put this here, you'll see only this is available. I need to find a way to mix these. And the best way is max. It will allow the maximum value of each one to appear. So we have the maximum value of 1 and maximum value of 2. And this is similar to the, I think it's the Lighten. And if you go to University, you'll find a full series of tutorials on fields. So have these seed points. You can add as many seed points, or you can generate them using particles. But this is an easy way. Now, in this list, what I want to do is, as the animation is playing, I want these to grow. And we use the freeze layer. The freeze layer does many things. And one of them is, if you select it and you set the mode to grow, what it will do, it will measure around every point that has a value and measure, let's say, 10 centimeters, and propagate that value to every other. And then it will store that value for the next frame. And grow does that automatically. So if I press play now, you'll see that these things grow. Now, one more thing that has been shown in numerous tutorials is that if you untwirl this, see that little arrow there, the radius value, which is this one over here, you can actually use a field to drive this value. And this is where I use the random. I'm going to go to my random field. I'm going to increase the scaling, and I'm going to add animation because I want it to, let's say, move to close any gaps. Make sure that you grab it and you put it in the radius. So what's going to happen now is, from the random field, which here's the visual representation, anything that has a value of 1 is going to provide a radius of 10. Everything that has a value of 0, will allow a radius of 0. And because this is moving around and it has many intermediate values, the freeze is going to grow by any range from 0 to 10, which means it's going to provide us with a more random growing pattern where you get these little divots here. And because I have that thing animated, it should move. Do I have it animated? Random field, animated 100%. And I set this to max usually because it's a matter of habit now. So if you see any gaps, it could be because 10, the value of 10, the maximum, is not enough to close those gaps. So it won't be able to do that. So go to the freeze, and if you see any gaps, like here on the shoulder, set it to 15, for example. And now we're going to have all the holes closed. And here it's growing. Now, if you want it to grow slower, you have to change the effect strength and it's going to bleed in. But anyhow, I'm happy with this. I have 100 frames. Now I want to use this. Everyone has approved it. I've got all the paperwork done and I'm not losing my job. So I can go to this and I can right click and say, bake as Alembic and delete. The only reason I'm doing that, it's going to make the rest of the tutorial much faster to deal with. You can keep this procedural to a great extent. So if I do this, it will take approximately 1 minute, 10 seconds. So I'm not going to do this. I'm going to load the one I already did. Now, when you're loading an Alembic tool which had any extra attributes that was saved, make sure the other attributes is on because this is by default off. Other attributes means any vertex maps, basically. And if you're bringing it from any third-party program, those are not called vertex maps or attributes. Now, if I press OK, what you will see now is the same statue, but now it's Alembic, and these things are growing. Now, one thing I forgot to show, and this was an answer to something which I don't know if I'm going to have time to show today, but nonetheless, let's go and find that original one. This is the one I just made. What I forgot to show you, which is very important, is whenever you have a freeze layer that's growing, the freeze layer, it's very helpful, but it's temperamental, just like me. And I cannot go and say, okay, let's add on top of this some sort of curve or something like that. It may cause problems. So the way I deal with this is by creating another vertex map. And this is a method that is used very often. Make sure it goes after. I'm going to name the first one growth. And I'm going to name the second one, let's call it a curve for whatever reason. Now, the second one, set it to fields. And I want to use the result from the first one. I can get rid of this freeze layer that's automatically created. I'm going to drag this in. So now it's just bringing the values from this one into this one over here. So we have no difference. But what if I want to add one of these effects on top? So the curve is the best one you can do. I reset it so that the tangents are not there. I can make this more contrasty. And you can see I'm creating this very hard contrast. And you can add other effects like the delays and the decays and all that kind of stuff. You can add them to a secondary one, and that will help you solve any potential problems. So this is the second one, and here I called it curve. I call it something else over here. Here I'm calling it contrasted because it's contrasted. So we have now an Alembic that has the initial one with 3 seeds. That's what I saved. You can see it's nice and blurry. And this one, which is the same version, but it's more contrasty. And it's all saved. So how do we create that growth? Well, this is not at all difficult. You make a copy of this, you make it editable, you remove everything. And what I like to do to begin with, let me close this. I'm going to get them both and color them. Basic or automatic. I'm going to make one red and the other one green. So now they are perfectly overlapping. I'm going to take the green one and I'm going to contract it very slightly. So use a plane effector. I'm going to go to my plane effector and set the parameter I want it to move is, let's say, minus 0.1 in the Z. Now, the Z direction is the normal direction when the effector is a deformer. So go to point. Now you can see it's sort of inset by 0.1 centimeter. I can make this minus 0.3. Just make sure that it's not very visible. It's not going to be, depending on how close you go, it may not be at all visible. And this is just an artifact from the real-time viewport. So let's quickly, I could do this in Redshift, but I don't have to. I'm going to create 2 very quick materials, or not, because I have the colors, so I don't even need to do that. Now, after I've contracted it, what I can do now is offset it. So I'm going to call this contract. I'll create another one. This one, I could have made a copy, but sorry, I forgot. I prefer 10 clicks to 1 click sometimes. And I'm going to set it to point. So now this one is getting inflated. And the amount I want it to inflate is, if we go to the plane effector, I'm going to call this inflate. The amount, if you go to the fields, is this. So now what we have is a situation where wherever we had the vertex map, we have this secondary mesh. And this secondary mesh is just being offset slightly, and it's creating the illusion that something is growing on Athena's skin. And the great thing about this is that all you have to do is go and colorize this with some sort of icy, transparent thingamadoodle, and the rest with whatever you want to do, marble or something like that. So you have the ability to do that. And one thing I've done, I think in this one, which no, that's not the final. This I think is the final. What I did, I've got the plaster. Let me bring up the material, which is just one of the preset materials we have from the asset manager. And I have this simple ice. And I added to the simple ice the round corner shader in the bump map. And what this will do is it will allow for these two things to blend a bit better when one is on top of the other. So let me turn this on and go close. You'll see the head quite close here. There you go. It creates a more smooth transition between these two things. And providing you created the material that's a bit better, what you see here is just going to evolve, just take some time because, again, the total scene has over 500,000 polygons. And you can see that this is going to be growing. So this is effect number one. How do you create a controlled growth on an object and use that extra growth, which is nothing more than a displaced mesh of the same object? We can control it using that method, and then you just add a material and it pops through and it becomes, it appears to be ice growing. Okay, so let me close this, let me turn off this. And let me press Control and close this. And now I'm going to show you how far you can take it. B. Havana, sorry, I was doing this. I keep showing it to you. So here's Athena. I'm going to turn everything off, which in Greek is Athena, right? So the goddess of wisdom. And her owl was called Sophia with a PH, which is wisdom. So we have this playing here, and this is a standard material. And in the standard material, I've added a vertex map with that contrasted with a colorizer to create the red and yellow colors. What I want to do now is I want to find a way so that some icicles grow on Athena, where I have some splines, because the ice is going to propagate and then it's going to create the icicle. And this is what I've done with this setup. I'm going to go rewind. I'm going to go to frame 35 before it touches maybe 40. And then I'm going to press play. And what you're seeing here, look underneath here, pay attention here. Look under her chin. Whoop, there it goes. It's growing. And that's procedural. There's no keyframes taking place. And I'm going to show you how you can do this by transferring the values from the yellow thing, the growth, to the spline, and then the spline with the growing values on the spline to a volume measure, volume build and volume measure, and it will grow automatically. And all you have to do for any icicle you want to create, you reproduce this setup here. You create another spline, but it stays automatic. So let me delete everything except for the spline. And I've got my notes in front of me because you never know if something goes wrong. Okay.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, exactly. So what I've done here, just to let you know, and how vertex maps work on splines, is the following. You just draw any spline. So let's go to my object and my spline tool and deselect this. You draw any spline. Press escape. Spline's done. Excellent. Then you tell it to be linear and no subdivisions. And you basically select the points and you right click and you say subdivide, US. And this uses the intermediate points. So it's going to divide it quite equally now. Yeah, it's a weird day. Nothing is working today. The menu is stuck open. Okay.
Interesting.
Oh, there you go. Let me just close a few of these files just to make sure that I'm not reaching any RAM thingy because, yeah, I do forget that these are quite big models. Anyway, where were we?
So just in
So
case, if it's still lagging, I can show the
no,
solution of the other
sorry,
scene when you want to
I
restart.
apologize. I apologize. Everything is fine.
Okay.
My Dell workstation is unbeatable. So I'm
Yes.
pressing US, so I'm subdividing this. Now, the number of subdivisions doesn't really matter as long as we are aware that we need that distance between the points need to be smaller than whatever we're going to put in that grow when we make it. But this is how I made the spline, right? That was just show how to make the spline. And here it is. And it's touching her skin, her chin. There you go. And here's what I'm going to do now. The spline, let's go back. Let's rewind here. The spline itself needs a vertex map. So go to other tags and add a vertex map. Select it, activate fields, use fields, go here and delete this. So I want this to start growing that value when the values of Athena touch this. So basically I need to drive this using this over here, which is the contrasted. And basically what's going to happen is that look at that, now they go white. So when those things touch the spline, when these values touch the spline, it just goes white. Now there's a reason that this happens. Because the mode is nearest, each point is going to try and find the nearest polygon, nearest vertex map. So this may read this or this, and this is not going to work for what we're trying to do. We want to confine that seeding to something very close. So we're going to use what's called average here. And I'm going to set this to 5 centimeters. And what this is going to do is if this spline, 5 centimeters close to any of these points, reads a value from this vertex map, it's going to transfer that vertex map. So now, as I continue playing, you will see that these ones, which are within that range of 5, have been turned yellow. They've read the value. We've transferred the value from that vertex map onto the other objects on the spline's vertex map. So what I need to do now is, in the same way, I need to grow it. So let's go on top of this. Let me rewind first. To grow it again, what do? We add a freeze and put it again on max, set this to grow, set the growing distance, let's say to, I'll leave it at 10 for now. And let's go what this is going to do. So the propagation will happen around frame 45, frame 50. I don't want to play the whole thing from the beginning. Let's see how this works. Pay attention to the spline and it grows. There you go. So the first part, transferring the data and propagating it down, we've finished with that. So now what we want to do is take the spline and or create, first of all, let's create a volume builder, which is going to be the construct that's going to make that icicle mesh. I'm going to set it to fog because I want to have better control over the values, and I'm going to use fields as well to do that. And I'm going to set the voxel size to 1 because I want it to have a fine mesh, and I'm going to drag the spline in here. So now, if I put this under a volume measure, I get this thing. I can go to my spline. When we have a spline, we can actually change this. 4.1 was what I found works well. Density, keep it at 1, so it creates a continuous object, and taper it out. So we have this sort of icicle thingy, which you can put deformers on. It's a mesh. You can do whatever you want. Now, the problem with this is that the volume builder is reading the points of the mesh itself. So it's going to generate that despite what values it has here. So here's the final problem we need to solve. We need to find a way for these vertex values to inform the builder to only build volumes where these values exist. So where we have some sort of value. So rewind this. Let's go to frame 45. Let's press play just so that the values propagate halfway down. That's where we're going to stop it. So the values are now at the top. Stop. There you go. So the values are up to here. How do I insert the vertex map data into the volume builder so that it only creates a volume up to this point and not the whole thing? Well, in order to bring vertex maps into volume builders, we have to put them through a field. And the best field to do that is the group field. So go here and add a group field on top. That's the first part. In the group field, I'm going to put it just underneath here. The group field needs to read the data we're going to propagate to the volume. And this is the vertex map over here. And the last piece of the puzzle is, first of all, we want the group field to not create a volume based on a 200 by 200 by 200 box, because fields don't have geometry, and a volume builder needs geometry in order to create that. And currently it just creates a little box. Just change the box to objects below. And what this is doing now, it's only creating based on whatever is underneath it. But I don't want it to be in normal. I want it to be in multiply, so that the values of these, which are between 0 and 1, will be multiplied over the value of 1 which exists around the spline, and will allow us to control how long this is going to be. Turn this on, and now we can rewind. And why aren't you updating, sir? Okay, let me do that. I'm going to go to the group field, vertex map. That is very interesting because my vertex doesn't have values. And yet this, see if what did I do here? Group. Yeah, well, oh, yeah, it was an update issue. I turned it on and off and it worked. Okay, if it has update issues, just turn them on and off and it will be fixed. So let's go again to frame 40. Let's press play. Let's let it move on. And we should have a little icicle that pops up and starts growing. And with this little magic, I rest my case. Tell me how beautiful that was, everyone, all 34 of you, and anyone else on watching it on other platforms. Any questions? Let me know.
It was really beautiful. Seriously, this setup is amazing. It's really cool. I love it. And
Okay.
so
Okay,
far, I don't see questions on the chat.
I'm going to be reading the question. So you can grab the screen now. Have you fixed the issue?
Well, fixed is, well, yes. So for my case, I fixed it. So
Okay.
let me grab the screen. So now I have the screen back. So what was the problem? For some reason, this vertex map here didn't like the sphere to be deformed when it's simulated. So the moment I switch it off, and now it seems like I have an update issue here. All right, so here we go. The moment it's not deformed, it's working as expected. And now it isn't anymore. So let me just current state to object that thing. And now I have it here. And let's just get rid of the others. And if I use this sphere instead, now I have to delete this one and just use this one here. Then you can see that it works. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I just want the volume. And now you cannot really see it. But what we can do is we can add a decay field. You can find that here. And with the decay, we can create traces, right? So now you can see that it is leaving a trace. And we can set the effect strength to 100%. And this way, it will just create a trace and it's going to stay. All right. So now I'm going to use the very same trick that Noseman just used. I'm going to rename the first vertex map to 1. And I'm just going to create a copy here simply by control dragging it over. I'm going to rename this to 2. And in this case, I just want to get rid of everything in here and use the good old trick of reading the first vertex map in the second one. So now the two are identical, but what we can do here is we can adjust the mode from nearest to be, for example, average. And average will blur everything out here. We can reduce the radius and just bring it down here. Actually, we don't have to do it in here. Maybe let me delete this. We don't need that second vertex map. Anyhow, it's good that I showed that trick again. So what I want to do instead, let me delete this, is I directly want to deform this snow plane, and I'm going to use the displace deformer for it. So here's the displacer. I'm going to make it a child. We can also get rid of the collision deformer. We don't need it anymore. And in here, as I said earlier, in the shading tab, we can add a shader. And everything that is gray will keep the original geometry. Everything that is white will come up. Everything that is black will be pushed down. And what we can do here is we can just add a color shader. Right? So if we add the color shader and it's white, it will, the whole geometry will be pushed up because that's normal direction. But as soon as I bring it down to a black value, you can see that it's being pushed down. And in the displacer, we can set the height to a little bit more. That was too much. And maybe let me go with 15. And then we can mask that deformer with fields. And we can also just use the first field in here, the first vertex map in here, and do exactly the same that we just did in the other vertex map in here, set it to average, bring down the radius, and also create a decay field. So here we go. Let's bring this up to 100%. And now something is wrong with my thinking today. Okay, so let's see. So here we go. This is actually working. Here we go. Average radius. Let me untick this just to test it. Oh wow. Right. Okay, let me delete these two. Let me go the other way again. And let me just try this. This way. All right, so here we go. Now we have this. We set it up to be average. Sorry, I'm going quickly through this because you've seen it 2 times already. And okay, so this is good. And now here we need this second vertex map. And for some reason, that is really interesting. That is really interesting. All right. Do you have an idea, Noseman?
I'm replying to questions. What has happened? Give me a quick description.
So what is happening? What we have here is a vertex map, and this vertex map is creating a trace.
Show me the trace. Show me the trace. That's a trace.
That's
and you
the
want
trace.
to propagate that? Good. You want to propagate that to the displacer?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Go to the displacer. Go to the displacer. Turn off the fields.
Yep.
To see if the displacing is happening. See if the
displacing is happening. So here you can see that the displacing is working. And here we have
The displacing is happening. Good.
this. Maybe it's an update issue. Let me try that. Let me animate this radius here. So here we
Instead
go.
of Displacer, try plane effector. See if it's an effector problem.
Let me quickly do. Oh, that was wrong. Let me quickly do this and just set a keyframe. This way it will force an update every time. And that's still not. Here we go. So now it's working, but not displacing. All right, what was your approach?
Use a plane effector with a field in it. Get rid of the displacer for now.
All right, so
you deleted the Vertex Map as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to use the plane effector, and I'm going to, well, just abuse it as a deformer. I'm going to make it a child here by holding down Shift. And I'm going to go to the Deformer tab and set it to point. This way, it will deform the points. And now I can go into the Parameters tab and set position Y to 0. And then with the Z direction, I can adjust the displacement effect here. And now if I want to mask this, I can, let me see if this works. So for some reason, we've got it here already. Let me have a look from the side. But for some reason, it is not working.
Yeah, I think the combination of running too many Microsoft products, Teams and whatnot, I think you just need to restart your Cinema 4D. I would bet, because it worked before. I saw it. So it's one of those things where
it did work.
It's probably, yeah, it did work.
All right. Do you want to show something else or reply to any questions, and I can just give it a try?
Let's see if there are any questions here. So I wrote a few things, but I'd like to address them. There was a question by Deduck about the hair system tutorials, and my answer, and so everyone knows.
Can I give you a screen? Or
you don't have to. If you want to, let people see how you solve your problems. You can share. I mean, I can have an empty scene here sitting.
Well, the problem is I cannot restart Cinema 4D at the moment for streaming
you
reasons.
Can share my screen.
That's all right.
You can share my screen. You can share my screen. It's an empty scene. If I need to do something, I'm going to do it. So back to Deduck's question. The hair system hasn't changed pretty much since a couple of years after it was first introduced, and that's over 10 years ago. It's still extremely capable and works with Redshift very nicely. So every single tutorial you can find, there are hundreds of third-party tutorials on YouTube by various users and Cineversity. Everything you see there is very relevant. All you have to do is be aware that the buttons in the newest version of Cinema 4D since R26 have changed a bit.
Can I also drop in a plug? Because I'm currently doing a workshop with Joe Herman, and yesterday he did a whole sort of 2 hours on texturing Redshift and then adding hair using like the principled hair shader. So that can be found on the training team YouTube channel. And I've also linked to, he's done like a really comprehensive hair tutorial as well, which has got sort of in the past, but as Noseman's saying that it hasn't updated too much. So check those out if you want to learn about hair.
Yeah, there's I think hair and MoGraph are two of those things where you can find tutorials on so many subjects tangential to that. So for the time being, let me be very straight. For the time being, we're not planning to do any particular new hair tutorials because all the information is out there. But if you want to learn it, the resources exist, and go and watch all the shows we do. Don't take a sabbatical from your job or something like that, or get your, employers to pay you for education and watch tutorials. There's enough for a couple of lifetimes if you want to do that. And the ones we do, especially, are very high quality. So, and after that shameless plug, let's see. question that was asked about vertex maps by Ahmed about the modify fields. Now, I want to show something over here, and it relates to what I did before, just to make it absolutely clear what Ahmed asks and what the situation is. Let's take this 100 by 100 plane, and let's make it editable and go and add a vertex map. And in the vertex map, I'm going to set it to fields, and I'm going to remove this. I'm going to add a spherical field. I'm going to leave it where it is because I'm too lazy to move it. And I'm going to make it a bit smaller. There we go. So on top of this, I'm going to add a freeze layer. I'm going to set it to grow. And I have an expectation that this is going to grow. And everything works fine. Now, sometimes people say, okay, let me go and add a decay or an invert, right? If I put an invert here, watch what happens. If anyone has epilepsy, close your eyes. Every frame, it becomes negative. The reason is, and this is a very, I'm going to give it a quick description. The freeze stores the result of the whole list independent of where it resides. And I can put it here. You can see this doesn't do, the invert only happens in the original one. But if I put it here, in frame 0, I create the spherical field. The freeze freezes the inverted state. So now the freeze contains what you see here. On the next frame, the freeze will invert, the invert is going to invert the freeze, which contains the previous state. And long story short, if you want to do anything that includes, a modifier layer, any one of these white ones, don't do it in the same vertex map. Make sure you have different names so you don't get confused. Don't get confused. My typing is terrible. Create a second vertex map or copy this one. Don't get confused too. Is that much better? So now what you do, you delete these and you say, okay, this new field reads the data from this field, whatever that is, which is the growth. And now I'm going to put my invert on this one. So the inversion does not apply to whatever the freeze layer has set at that moment, which will be the normal one. The next frame is going to be the inverted one. The next is going to be the inverted of the inverted, so back to the normal and so forth. If you want that flash effect for whatever reason, because why not, you can do that. The same limitation applies for any one of these modifier layers, because they modify anything underneath them, but the freeze layer stores anything despite where it resides. So use 2 or 3 or 4 more vertex maps if you want to add more layers. So I can go here, I can do an invert, then I can do some sort of decay, and you'll see that now it grows slower, and you can do a curve. So it's not a very difficult thing to do, just adding one more. But look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So I hope that answers your question. I'm going to wait for any one of you to interrupt me while I'm going to let this play. So there's something to say. Okay. Oh, my friend Justin. Yes, I did a tutorial for Justin the other day on my YouTube channel. You can search me by my name, Athanasios Prosantzis, or YouTube/@Noseman. I do stuff there. And the last one I did was for using nodes to create some sort of raycasting method. And anyway, go watch it, subscribe, tell your families and your barber and your pets to subscribe as well. And,
I watched it today and it was fantastic.
Oh, thank you very much, Jonas. You have to say these things, so
I don't have to, but I do.
Right. The Restream bot, Geoff Burns says, are there any plans to update C4D hair in the future? Well, everything is going to be updated in the future, and you can interpret it any way you want it. But don't forget the hair. Right, I'm gonna put this out there because it's something we come across many times that was discussed quite recently. Make sure you know the tools and ask questions about the tools, because 90% of the time when we are asked, can Cinema 4D be updated? This tool can be updated to do this and do that. 90% of the times, we can already do it. It's just that people don't know about it. So I know that it takes a lot of time to watch tutorials, and Cinema 4D is a complex program. But make sure you educate yourselves. So, for example, about the hair. If you have, despite the fact that Maxon is generally always improving the software, it would be nice to present specific questions. What would you like hair to do? And you think it doesn't or it doesn't. That guides us to either develop techniques or highlight features which are not very well known, and stuff like that. For example, from all 35 of you watching, I want to test a theory. When you create a sphere and you add hair, so I'm going to add hair. I want to generate one spline per guide. So I'm going to go to hair. I'm going to say, let's generate splines, but in the roots of the hair, I'm going to say use as guides. So it's not going to generate the 50,000 hairs that usually generates. And I'm going to generate splines. And yet these splines are still, right. And this is a spline object now. So I can use the spline object to clone things on. Please respond, anyone that didn't know that hair could do this. I'm just generally curious if you knew or didn't know.
Do you want me to reply in the chat as well, or?
Ha 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 ha. So did you know you can do this? So if you all knew it, if no one says I didn't. So Alfonso, you didn't know that. Good. Now you do. I expect to see something from you.
So the cool thing is that even that you can.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you can even use this technique to clone objects onto the hairs, and the hair will deform the objects. You just need to make sure that the hair thickness is set to a very wide thing. But if you just clone a few like figure primitives on that, it looks incredibly funny, I can tell you.
Exactly. You can actually use the hair system to bend objects based on, you can put trees and the tree is going to bend. Or don't put too many trees. But anyway, so I can see from the replies, approximately half people didn't know that the hair system can generate splines, and those splines can be confined to the guides, and that they can be used in a cloner, or they can be used in a spline wrap, for example. So you can get a cylinder and you can clone it on these using a spline wrap. So if you watch my jellyfish presentation, I use this method with the spline wrap, because the spline wrap creates clones for every segment. So generally, the tool Cinema 4D is much more competent and much easier than a lot of people know or expect. So put trust in your trainers, us, I mean. Ask specific questions about some outcome you want to achieve when you want to do something, and that will help us create more content which is closer to what your expectations are from Cinema 4D. Okay, so that's all I have to say. Let me, you can take it from me. And
all right. Yeah, I solved it. But you know, when you have one project and you like spread it all over the session, it feels like I do the advertising breaks here. However, the problem was sitting in front of the screen, which is the case in most of the cases. So this is the checkbox I didn't untick. And once you do that, you can see that it also works this way now. And yeah, now you can do all the crazy stuff. Also what Noseman already showed, so you can make this grow and stuff like that. So yeah, just make sure that in the Vertex Map you untick use deform points, because otherwise you can see that this is already doing weird things. And here you go. Now it's working. Finally, yay. Right, so I think it's also time to wrap up. Or do you have to show something else?
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
just respond to a couple of queries.
Yes.
For example, how can we rotate masks from Redshift state using UV coordinates and so forth? That I don't know, but if there's something you could do a quick tip on, or someone on Redshift and rotating um, UV coordinates, that will be interesting. By the way, you can use the projections from the Cinema 4D material object. So instead of UVW, you can use something. But I know that you're asking about UVW. Just saying that, just in case it wasn't clear. Let's see. Hair to become a GPU. Okay, we'll pass it on to the developers.
So
Okay,
there's
what else?
one other thing,
Go ahead.
one other question by Blake. Any tips on how to create cool sports show reveal, like with metal and tech, like you see on NFL or NHL? I mean, we can make that a topic, right? So with cool, you don't mean like cool in temperature, but cool and nice and appealing, I assume. So yeah, we can do a session about that as well.
Yes, we can. One thing I want to provide a to, shout out to 0626. Oh yeah, 062. Why didn't you just type 0626? And if you can share my screen, because it's a great tip, and I tell you,
Do you
this
want
is
me to
something
share?
that you can share my screen.
There you go.
There you go. So it says that if you want to use those modify layers with the freeze, you go to the freeze and you click subfields only, which it does work. All right. The reason I prefer, so I'm a fan of splitting down the data to more manageable chunks, and it helps me with my setups. Whereas for example, there's one of the tutorials I did for the simulation, the pyro, where I'm burning a cloth that is simulated. And in that particular case, I need one vertex map to be where the cloth is going to be invisible after it's burnt. And the other one is how the part of the cloth that controls the burning. And having those two separate in this particular way, where you create the second one and you drag the first one. For me, it allows for more flexibility while you're working on something because you have the different types of data always at hand if you want to do something else. You can pack things in one field list, but then if you want to split, let's say I have this situation where this one is inverted and decayed, all right? So let's say this is the outcome I wanted. Fantastic. What if I wanted at a certain time further down the line to pick up my original one to do some sort of deformation or drive something else, maybe an alternative solution? If I put everything in one field list, I will have to duplicate that field list with all the other modifier layers. By splitting it down, although you add a bit more data to your scene, you're actually able to have different states of what you're doing. So I can take this one and put this one in here and say this one, I want it to be, let's say, I don't know, this one has the curve, right? So this one is like this. So now I have these three states. I have this one, which is the original growth, this one. So if you want to put things in one list, yes, that's what you need to do. You go here, you activate subfields only, and you can add everything on top. But if you want to work on more complex things where the data stream, the vertex maps and all that may become useful in other parts of your scene, it's good to have these things broken down in different let's say data points, or how can we call these breadcrumbs or something like that. And as far as I'm concerned, it helps me work a bit better with the data, naming and so forth. If everything is in one list, it's that one list. You have to start moving things up and down. And that's why I prefer that way. But please follow the advice given by 0626. And if you want to put them all there, just do that. And I'm done.
And you're done. So I'm gonna take the screen back, and yeah, just let me show you this one last thing because I mentioned it with the growth effect. So if you want to add a growth effect to this trace that already has been like there, then you just add a freeze. Make sure that the snowball in this case is not in contact, so that we have a clean vertex map here. Create the freeze, and so that's because the freeze will store the current the current state of the vertex map the moment you create it. And then we need to set this to, let's say, add, and we go to mode grow, and let me decrease the effect strength here, which will basically bring down the speed. And now if we play, you can see that I can also create things that work in the first place. Yay! Yeah, so I also want to get back to the sports graphics question again, not by showing something, but I think a good solution always is to have fast movements with motion blur, and then never stop moving the stuff. So usually what I see in sports graphics a lot is fast movements and then still some movement when yeah, the stuff on screen should be readable to the audience. And I mean, whenever you have something with metal, it's also cool to add some sparks and so on, and you can perfectly do that either within Cinema 4D or in post using Particula, for example, from the Trapcode suite, stuff like that, and also smoke. You can do that using the Pyro system or also using Particula. There are so many ways of doing stuff. Always use good glows like optical glow. It's you can do amazing stuff with that stuff with those plugins. So yeah, let me jump to the housekeeping now, and here we go. So yeah, again, there is a site called maxon.net/events. I'm going to share it in the chat again. So if you go there, you find all the things that we are doing, all the webinars, all the workshops that we are doing online. Tomorrow we have VFX and Chill. Then there's going to be another demystifying post-production Monday about Redshift workflows in other DCCs than Cinema 4D, which is also quite exciting. We have a character workshop going on at the moment on Wednesdays with Joe Herman and Ellie. And next week we're going to have Max on Color on Thursday. And then the whole thing is going to repeat until the next Ask the Trainer, which is on site 2 actually. But in the next Ask the Trainer, we will have, well, a guest. And this guest is no one else than Grayscale Gorilla himself. Nick Campbell is going to be with us the next time in the next Ask the Trainer. So that's going to be exciting. Make sure you tune in. And yeah, in case you came late to this session, or you want to catch up with any of the other workshops and webinars that we are doing, just go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. And yeah, here you can watch the recordings of all of these sessions. And then also, we have this exciting Maxon Ask the Trainer exclusive wear shop where, wait, I'm going to share the link again. So here you go. And you need to type in that passcode, that passphrase that I shared as well. And yeah, then you can enter the stream, not the stream, the shop, sorry. And you can order one t-shirt for free, and you only have to pay for the shipping. All right, that's pretty much everything Jonas, we wanted to share. What's up?
After today's torment, I give you tomorrow off. You can take a long weekend.
I can take a long weekend. That's good.
You can take Monday off as well, and Tuesday. No, Tuesday we have to talk.
Well, but I would love to take Tuesday off. However,
okay,
that's discussions we can have offline. However, if you are interested, we can make a whole show about vacation discussions, which is also quite exciting. All right, so I would say see you everyone in the next Ask the Trainer session with Nick Campbell. But also make sure you tune in to all the other live streams we're doing. And teach yourself.
And hit me up on Twitter, Noseman GR. Ask questions publicly. Just like Justin's question, it was a public question and it generated a tutorial. And this is how we get the information. This is how we understand what your needs are. Just feel free, ask the questions. And if you ask them, I understand there are NDA things sometimes and so forth. I think it's a good idea that any information you ask about you need to know that other people struggle with the same kind of issues. So ask any questions. If you have any scenes, simplify them, send scene files and all that, and we'll do our best to support you. You can also email. Jonas, what's the email for the training team?
Oh, in this case, it's askthetrainer@maxon.net.
And there you have it.
Yeah. All right. So I think we have it. See you, everyone. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching.
coming.
Bye.